Hey guys, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be looking at another Elementalist build. Since the patch, burning started stacking intensity, so there is the possibility to burn your enemies to death, to burn them all. So today we're going to be looking at an Incineration Ellie, condition damage, pure burns, and this is something of what it looks like. We'll get into a proper discussion of it very soon. But basically the idea is we're going to use a whole bunch of fire stuff to stack incredible burns on people. These Quaggons we're fighting right now, they're fairly tanky, and so this should give you an idea of how powerful it is. There'll be other demonstrations as the video goes along. But what you want to do is look at those burn stacks. Yeah, they're looking pretty fine, aren't they? And as you can see, he falls over dead. So this is kind of the way that it works. I'm going to show you guys two versions of this build. First of all, kind of a complete YOLO PvE version that really doesn't have any kind of safety nets on it. And second, something with a lot more quality of life. You could probably even run in places like Wild vs. Wild or TPvP, just kind of going for this crazy burn angle. It feels nothing like any other Ellie build I've played before. And it's actually, though probably not the best build in the world out there, kind of viable, as you can see. Okay, so let's talk about Incineration Ellie. I'm going to show you guys, now that you've seen a little bit of how it works, exactly how to pull this off. I'm not saying this is the best Condi build in the game. I'm not even saying this is necessarily the best Elementalist Condi build. But if you want to go burning, and if you want to go hard on burning, if you want to do that for your Ellie, this is pretty much as good as it gets. I've been having an awful lot of fun with this. The highest tick of burning I have seen so far is 19,000 in one hit, and that's not like in a dungeon scenario. That wasn't with corruption, that wasn't with max might or vulnerability or any of the optimum stuff, so it can hit pretty hard. It's not unlike most condition builds, which slowly ramp into very high damage and kind of stay at high damage. This is a little bit more spiky. It's gonna ramp into very, very high burns, and then they'll ease off a little bit, but those high burns certainly do hit very, very, very hard. I've wanted to play an Elementalist that can actually incinerate people, do high burning damage for a long time, and so this has been a very fun concept to play with. What I'm going to do is show you guys all of your options. Specifically what I've got set up at the moment is kind of an Arcane Incinerator, but there are certainly, if you wanted to take this into Wild vs. Wild, a much more standard like dagger setup you can go with that has a lot more safety to it and a lot more it can actually do. So what exactly have we got? First, you need to make yourself look fiery. That's an absolute must of the spec. I almost had the Balthazar back piece on because it goes with our runes, but no, we'll go with the angel wings instead. Second, you're going to need to get yourself some Condi gear. So what I'm doing for PvE specifically, as there's really very little reason at all for any kind of defense, is I'm going Sinister gear. So I have pure Sinister trinkets on. This stuff isn't infused, but it's all Sinister. And then over here I have Sinister armor too. And then both my weapons, my legendary weapons here, have been selected as Sinister weapons. The Sinister stat set, for those of you guys who don't know, has condition damage as its main stat, so we're absolutely maxed out on condition damage. And then the other two stats it gives us are power and precision. Now, if you want something that actually isn't as glassy as all hell, especially considering you're an Elementalist, the other option I would say you can go for is Rabid. Rabid will trade the power for toughness. And that toughness is actually fine because you can convert toughness into more condition damage through your traits, which we'll talk about soon. So you could do like a split. You can go full Sinister as I have, or you can have some Rabid stuff over here on your trinkets, or you can have Rabid on one side, or you can go full Rabid. It's totally up to you. But I will say this build is incredibly squishy. It has like nothing defensive going on with it at all in this configuration because, hey, it's PvE and we don't really need defense. So, what else are we running for gear? Well, we've got the Runes of Balthazar. These things are very important. These guys will give you a whole ton more condition damage, 45% increased burning duration. Now, unless this changed with the patch, the way that Guild Wars 2 works, guys, is there's a hard cap of 100% on condition duration. So, you can double the length of your conditions, but it will never go higher. We're going to hit that 100% for burning. So, we get 45% longer burns from our runes. And also, when we use our heal skill, we'll burn people around us. The cherry on top of these runes is when you're at low health, you get free quickness. Now, quickness is all over the place now, but quickness is still very strong. So, if someone hits you when you're low, you get quickness for 5 seconds, and that can really help you pull off some nice stuff. So that's what the runes are doing for us. Our sigils, we're going with a Sigil of Corruption. This will give you plus 250 condition damage. If you don't like stacking sigils, your other option for PvE is Bursting. Bursting will give you somewhere around 200 condition damage instead of 250, but you don't have to like stack it up. So this is higher at the end, but Bursting could be better. It doesn't matter if you die. It doesn't matter if you go in water if you use Bursting. Bursting's a fair bit more expensive though. And then for the other weapon, I've actually gone with a Sigil of Smouldering. Now, you could run something like Doom, which would give you poison, which is probably going to be far more useful if you're taking this into some kind of a roaming area, like Wild versus Wild, but I'm running Smouldering. That gives us another 20% burn duration. Alright, so that's what we're doing for our gear. Let's look at food. A lot of this is pretty basic. It's a condition damage build, so your utility you want is Master Tuning Crystals. These give you the best. You can obviously go a tier down depending on how much you want to spend. And the other one, really important, is Koi Cake. Koi Cake's getting quite expensive. There is another version of it. But this will give you 40% condition duration. So this alone is putting your burns among your other conditions up very high also. So by eating this, we're well close to the 100% burning cap. And then we'll get the last little bit from our traits. So that's what we're doing there. Let's have a look at the traits. Now, the traits can change quite a lot depending on what you're trying to do. But you're generally always going to be specialized in fire. You're nearly always going to be specialized in arcane. And the last one you actually have a choice is earth. So let's talk about fire first. Fire is going to give us more power while we're in fire attunement. There's a lot of fire attunement camping here. Because I'm on Sinister Gear, I actually do some reasonable flat damage as well, so this is kind of useful. The other passive is you get Sunspot, which gives you a fire shield when you attune to fire, and then that means when people hit you, they can burn, and then you'll get might too, so that's pretty nice. And the cooldown is only 1 per target, so if you're surrounded by lots of mobs, they'll all get burned the first time they touch you. And then we do even more damage to burning foes. Note that Burning Rage isn't actually more burning damage, it's just more damage on your other skills while they're burning. Okay, so those are your passives. Then here's what we're going to take. We're going to take on the top. Critical hits have a chance to cause burning, and your burning lasts longer. So there you go. That's the last little bit of duration. We're actually at 105% Condi duration, so you can skimp out a little bit on the food if you like and drop it down. You'll still be at the cap. But basically, we've just doubled the duration of all of our burns through what I've said here, and we're applying them. Reasonable duration ones as well. 4.5 seconds of burn, no matter what attunement we're in on our crit. So that's pretty nice. In the second slot, we've got 3 choices. We've got more damage while we're attuned to fire, but that's flat damage, not Condi damage, so we don't really care too much. We've got one with fire, which gives our fire auras, means we'll get even more might. So when we swap into fire attunement, we get a fire aura, we get 2 might. Or if we use our skill 5 here, we get a fire aura, we get more might. Or lastly, power overwhelming. This is a new trait. This gives us more condition damage based on our power, which is great, because we're in Sinister Gear, which gives us power. Even if we didn't have Sinister Gear, if we'd gone with a Rabid option, which doesn't come with power, all characters have a base amount of power anyway, and so Power Overwhelming is always going to give you that extra. The only other one you might want to choose every now and then is Pyromancer's Training, so that you can spam your fire skills out a little bit more frequently, specifically Drake's Breath. We'll talk about the weapons and skills in a second, though. Then, last of all, we've got the Grandmaster, and the Grandmaster, actually, all 3 are fairly viable. On the top here, we've got Persisting Flames. This gives you a lava font when you drop down, but it makes your fire fields last longer. So because we're using a focus on this build, we're using Flame Wall, this actually means the Flame Wall will last for 10 seconds, and actually gives you more burns. So, if you are in a dungeon environment, I would actually say Persisting Flames is the best. Not only are you going to be giving Fury out to everyone when you blast in that field, but it's going to last longer, and it means that you're doing more consistently high damage for longer. Really strong. However, if you're running around on your own, Pyromancer's Presence is really good because this gives you lots of might. You're going to be camping in fire attunement a lot anyway. The 5 is instant activation. This just means you get tons of might, basically, and the might buffs your Condi damage. So this is really, really cool, unless you're in a dungeon when you're going to be at 25 might anyway, in which case I would say take the top one. And the last, very viable option, that you can even swap to while you're in dungeons, should you want to run this here, is Blinding Ashes. And this means that you're going to blind people when you burn them. This also would be pretty nice for when you're out in Wild versus Wild, or you're running some kind of TPVP version of this build. Every 5 seconds, basically, you're going to blind someone. The cool thing about this for PvE, though, and like stacking and so forth, is that internal cooldown actually affects every enemy individually. So if you drop a flame wall and 5 enemies walk into the flame wall, they'll all be blinded. Then they'll attack you, remove the blind, and 5 seconds later, they'll all be blinded again. It basically makes your flame wall turn into like a Glyph of Storms if you were to cast it in Earth Attunement. So this could be really strong as well, and maybe you'd want to toggle that on for certain like trash encounters in dungeons, and then go back to Persisting Flames when you want to fight bosses. So that's pretty much Fire Attunement. Fire Attunement is going to be a mainstay of the build. You're always really going to want to use it. Now, as for your other two specializations, really you're going to want Air, Arcane, or Earth. The version I've got right now are Arcane and Earth. Arcane is like incredibly important and really plays into the skills quite a lot. So before we go any further, I'm going to show you guys exactly what abilities we're using. We have a dagger on our main hand. We're using dagger because the skill 2, Drake's Breath, applies 4 stacks of burning on a really low cooldown, just 5 seconds cooldown. So you can keep doing it. Drake's Breath, Drake's Breath, Drake's Breath. And even better, the auto attack is actually 3 individual projectiles. That means 3 different chances to crit, which means 3 different opportunities to proc lots of different burns, which we'll get to in a second. So the auto is even quite nice. The 3 as well, though it only reads 1 burning here, if you cast the 3 just right, if you engage with the burning speed, so say we've got this Risen Putrifier here, if we engage just right, we'll actually get a lot of burns on him just from angling it properly. See, we got 3 burns, and that wasn't even done effectively. The reason for this is when you hit the blast damage will apply burns, but if you do it just past them so that they're stood in the fire, then they're going to start getting hit from the flame wall that lands behind them as well. Let's try again, shall we? Oh, he's moved. But there you go, so 3, 4. I didn't auto attack or anything there. So this is actually quite a lot of burns too, combined with the Drake's Breath. Then the final 2 skills, 5 is Great Might Generation, and again, even more burns from when people actually start attacking you back. And the Flame Wall, usually a terrible skill, I only ever use for might stacking. You wouldn't care about, never think of this as a DPS skill. The Flame Wall actually will pump out a lot of burns. If you trait this for the duration, that's 10 burn stacks in 1 skill, which is really powerful. So usually what I do to engage is use the 3, then drop it on them, and then use this, the 5 and the 2, and that had 13 stacks of burning on him already, just from those couple of skills. So Fire Attunement is incredibly strong, pumps out a ton of burns specifically on these weapons. You can swap, you can run Dagger for example, and the Ring of Fire will put out 3 instant burns, and then if people keep walking in and out of it, it can actually stack a lot higher than the Flame Wall will. Fire Grab's quite nice, but I certainly for PvE where people are a lot more static, Flame Wall is definitely a lot better than Ring of Fire will be for you, and you get more defensive and cool stuff on the other achievements. Let's look on the right-hand side of the skill bar, though. I'm running Arcane Brilliance. This is great because it's a blast, and you'd probably run this anyway. But then the other skills are all pretty different. Glyph of Storms It is so fun, this patch. It used to be the Glyph of Storms you would only ever use. This is how Guild Wars 2 has changed. You'd only ever really want to use it in Earth. Why would you only want to use it in Earth? Because it actually put a blind out every pulse on Earth. So you're kind of invulnerable to damage almost through most PvE environments while you're fighting trash. Just by dropping that against up to 5 targets, you'd blind them. And that was really cool. It was the only one you'd ever really want to use, though. Then a couple of patches ago, they changed it in Air Achievement to apply vulnerability. And suddenly, the Lightning Storm was putting 25 vul out on foes. That's really strong even for the Condi build, because this is actually going to increase your burn damage by 25%. But now, after this patch, the Fire Achievement version of it has been brought up and actually has viable use. This applies 1 stack of burning every tick. So this is 10 burn right here. Between just these 2 skills, if they're traded, you're getting 20 burn stacks out just from these 2 skills. So for particularly more tanky mobs, as many of the enemies around here are not actually, in fact they all seem to be dead right now, once you've engaged with your burning speed and your flame wall, you can drop a firestorm on them. It's actually better to put 10 stacks of burning on a foe rather than 25 vuln, like just in terms of raw stack damage here. And then they're going to get tons and tons of burns on them. So here we basically, this would be your full rotation. You would drop the Glyph of Storms there before going into the Drake's Breath. And he walked out there, and it's been kind of annoying. If you LOS people properly, then they'll stay in. You're just going to put tons and tons of burns out. So this is actually a really fun skill now, and this is even more worthy of consideration if you weren't taking it already for Dungeons for the Vault. So moving on, it gets even weirder. Then we have Glyph of Elemental Power. Who the hell runs this? I bet a lot of you Elementalists don't even know how this works. So when you activate this, it will put a buff on you, on your active effects. And depending on the achievement where you first cast it, that buff does different things. If you cast it in Air Achievement, you'll have a 25% chance every 5 seconds to inflict weakness. If you first activated it in Water Achievement, then it will be Chill. If you first activate it in Earth, it will be Cripple. But in Fire, it's Burn. It's not even just 1 burn, it's 2 stacks of burn. So again, earlier, as I was talking about the auto attack with multiple projectiles, this helps you proc not only your trait, your fire trait, but it will help you proc the Glyph of Elemental Power too. And as you can see from the tooltip there, that's 5,000 damage every single time that procs. It won't last long enough to be on you forever, but we'll talk about specializing for Air Achievement soon enough. Then we have Arcane Power, which I'll talk about in just a second. And lastly, we have Fiery Greatsword. Fiery Greatsword's been good even after the nerf. It's been great for moving around. It's great for mobility. People use it. But actually, it's really good on its active effects on this build as well. The Firestorm you get on Fiery Greatsword, unfortunately, doesn't drop burn tick, so you couldn't go like Firestorm, and then the wall. That would just be ridiculous. But the two actually apply 6 stacks of burn that last for ages. Yes, that tooltip is reading correct. If you drop a 2 on someone and say you immobilize them in order they don't move, that's going to do 24,000 damage for free straight away. So again, like once you've used your other rotations, if the enemy's still alive, you can drop a Fiery Greatsword on them for those specific boss fights and stack even more ridiculous amounts of burns on foes. Alright, so that's most of the skills. Let's look back at Arcane, and hopefully this will make sense for you guys now, and we'll continue along. Don't forget, we've got Glyph of Elemental Power, chance to burn, 2 stacks of burn. We've got Burning Precision, which is burns on crits. And now also in Arcane, we're going to take Arcane Precision. Skills have a chance to apply a condition on critical hits. While we're in Fire Attunement, that's another burn. The burn doesn't last very long on this one, but again, this is another thing that's going to keep burns rolling out, even say when you're in other attunements, not this one specifically, but it means even if you're not using skills that specifically apply burning, like the auto attack, this will ensure that you maintain a certain level of stacks consistently. The other two we're not really ever going to look at. Maybe you'd want the Vigor though, if you wanted more sustain. The new build system's kind of interesting. It's very easy to just kind of swap stuff in until eventually you're tanky enough or you've got enough quality of life. Then for the next slot, we're going to come down here. Really, the choice here isn't too fun. You can take Elemental Contingency, and specifically I'd say if you wanted to not be complete YOLO glass, you should probably run this. This will give you retail while you're in Fire Attunement or some other nice things too. However, I'm running Final Shielding because when I get low on health, this will explode damage out, and it has specific synergy with the Grandmaster I'm taking, which is Elemental Surge. Now, Elemental Surge is even more burns. Elemental Surge means any arcane skill you use applies burning, and quite a lot of burning. Like, duration-wise, 11 seconds, that's a fair amount of burning. And so, this is why I'm running Arcane Power, because Arcane Power means your next 5 attacks do critical damage. So this isn't just 1 burning, this is 5 burning from Arcane Power. Here, I'll just auto-attack this guy with Arcane Power. There you go. You can see we get a ton of burn, and just from a couple of autos, the guy dies straight away. And so this is really, really, really strong. This is why it's kind of very spiky, very high, sudden burns. And then you kind of got a long cooldown to deal with. The other really nice thing about this is you're running Arcane Brilliance anyway. This means that Arcane Brilliance now will inflict 11 seconds of burning. So you use your heal skill next to someone, you do a little bit of flat damage to them, and then you do 5,000 damage to them just because you used your heal. 5,000 damage just from using the heal skill. And let's not forget our friend on the Balthazar runes that gives us another proc of burning on our heal skill. So our heal skill actually puts out burning all on its own if we can get close enough to this guy, and we'll start DPSing the foe down. So everything you're doing, as you can see here, that also then has its chance to crit and activate your other 3 things that are proccing burns. All just rolls into this incineration machine. Now, again, this is very YOLO. You can, of course, though, if you're on Arcane, actually go to use Evasive Arcana. Evasive Arcana is really good. Evasive Arcana can essentially mean you can run the Signet Heal, which again is far more sustaining. It means you have a free utility slot here instead of Arcane Power, and you can run, say, whatever else you want here. Conjure Flame Axe is pretty nice. If you want a more range of condis, Radiation Field if you're on an Asura is really good, or whatever your heart desires. And then lastly, you do still get a little bit of burns, because Evasive Arcana does actually give you 2 burn stacks from dodge rolling in front of people. So it is lower, it isn't as spiky, but once you engage, say, on this guy, you can drop your wall, you can do your normal stuff, and then you can just kind of dodge roll in front of someone, and it will put more burns out on them as well. So Evasive Arcana does also mean as soon as you get into those other attunements, you still have that sustain, you still got your dodge rolls, you still got all of that stuff you really like. And I would very much recommend that if you're going to take this into World vs. World, if you wanted to 1v1 with this, go the Evasive Arcana route, get your Signet back, get that stuff back, and run Rabid gear, and you're pretty much good to go. Those changes are probably quite necessary. The other thing about this trait is it's not just giving us condis, it actually drops the cooldown of our arcane skills, and it gives us extra ferocity for free, which will have some impact considering we have quite high precision from our Sinister gear. So, that's just 2 of the specializations. That's a lot of the incineration machine going. Now what? Well, Earth can seem like the really obvious choice. Before this patch, Earth was kind of like, oh, this is the Condi line, why wouldn't it still be? And it still does have some stuff to offer us. It gives us toughness while we're Earth, it gives us a cripple when we're close to people, and people close to us, we take less damage from, so it's a little bit of defense built in here. But actually, if you look at the traits themselves, they don't offer too much for us. Yes, we get a Condi trait here. Bleeds we apply last longer. That means that in theory, if you want, you can still cast your glyph in Earth Attunement and you'll get little bleeds off with the blinds. In fact, you can double up. You can get blinds from the glyph and blinds from the flame wall in cases with extremely fast attacking trash and still keep everyone blind for a long period of time. And also, while you're in Earth Attunement, you know, your auto attacks are going to be applying bleed. This is going to give you more pressure. It's going to make those bleeds last longer, do a little bit more damage, and your 2 applied bleeds too. But your bleed damage really isn't going to be that high, and you don't have too much bleed application here. If you ran dagger offhand, you could maybe get a bit more, but that's for you guys to experiment with. Overall, though it's a Condi trait, it's not too useful. This is a really powerful one, Strength of Stone. Gain condition damage based on your toughness. Why am I recommending you guys run Rabid gear instead of, like, Carrion gear? It's because of this. Rabid gear gives you toughness, and then that toughness rolls into more condition damage. If you're on Sinister, just like me, this basically means gain plus 100 condition damage. If you're not interested in plus 100 condition damage, you can get stability on your swaps, or you can have your CCs reduced. But let's go pure YOLO. That's the way I do things. Then we've got 3 Grandmasters, and these are all purely defensive. I like Diamond Skin. Not only are we putting out crazy burns, we're immune to Condis. Before the patch came out, I did some 1v1s with one of the Shoutcasters, Jebro, and while he was on his engineer during these 1v1s, he was on like a celestial engineer that was trying to do Condi damage, and when I started playing into Diamond Skin, he just could do 0 damage to me, while I had complete YOLO glass burns coming out everywhere. Like, this is how strong this can be. And then you've got your other options too. You could run the Signet trait if you were running with Evasion Arcana, and then you would get the active effects of your heal skill and stuff, and you can actually pop them, and so on. Or you can't be crit while you're in Earth. So Earth's okay. Earth gives us, you know, some stuff, but there's also Air, and Air is actually totally viable. Water doesn't really have much synergy with what we're trying to do, but let's have a look at Air. Air can be fun. Why is Air fun? Well, because Air is the glyph line, and we're running 2 glyphs. So actually, in the master slot for Air, you can take Inscription. And this means that whenever you pop one of these glyphs, you get more might for yourself, or depending on the attunement you're in, and they're going to start cooling down quicker. These things have got quite long cooldowns. By taking Inscription, your glyph of elemental power you can almost maintain. It lasts 30 seconds, it cools down in 36. So it's almost maintainable. The Glyph of Storms as well will be coming up a lot quicker also. And beyond that also, you've got some stuff in the other areas. You can take extra ferocity, more crit damage. At the end of the day, it's a bit of damage. It's not the burns, but it is a bit more damage. You can take super speed for quality of life or even fury. You do have an aura, of course, very easily accessible. Every time you swap into fire achievement, you get an aura, and the 5 is an aura. So if you were to take the top one up here, you're giving yourself lots of fury and swiftness, just fine. And then you can pick, say, Bolt to the Heart if you like, for some more damage when enemies go low, like flat damage. And again, with Sinister, you can't underestimate the flat damage you have on some of these abilities. The final perk of Air really is the Minor here, and this allows you to inflict vulnerability on your crits, which you're getting a lot of, and that vulnerability will increase your condition damage, probably more than the Bleed trait will from Earth. So it's kind of up to you which one you go for. I really find Air isn't too bad, specifically because of the glyph cooldowns. I love super speed, and the vulnerability is a really welcome add-on, especially if you can get it rolling quite a lot. And so yeah, those are really your options with the traits. Those are the 2 versions you can do. You can either be kind of an Arcane guy, or you can just blow people up. Hopefully there will have been some good footage in the background for you guys of this thing in action. What I want to do before we close the video off though, and if you haven't seen one already, which you might have, I want to kill another Risen Giant and just sort of demonstrate to you guys how high the burn stacks peak at and how much damage they end up doing too. So give me a second, we're going to cross this water and hopefully keep our corruption while we're at it. Oh, for fuck. Alright, here we go. I did lose my corruption while I was in the water, and that pretty much sucks. But so yeah, we'll engage on this guy. I've told you guys a little bit of my rotations. I'm not sure if they're perfect just yet. It'll be something to play with. But yeah, let's see how much burn we can throw on this giant, shall we? So we're going to start with the flame wall. We'll move in like so. We'll try and drop this stuff. He's moving. What? Why? Why would that happen? Damn it. We have to kill him again. That is not good enough. That is not good enough. Yeah, we were getting some 10k ticks there, but that is ridiculous. 1 second. Okay, guys, he's just on respawn. I'm actually coming and recording this a little bit during the editing, as I noticed I made some pretty big mistakes while killing the boss, but there were a few things I wanted to talk about. I haven't quite touched on about the build just yet. First of all is the Flame Axe. Now, Flame Axe is a pretty cool skill that you can try and use. I did have a concept with the Flame Axe. The Flame Axe 3, as you guys can see here, actually has you quickly retreat and drops a bunch of little ticks that inflict burns, much like the Flame Wall does for the focus. So I had this crazy idea that, much like with the old Fiery Greatsword Rush, you could maybe turn around and use this against a wall in a dungeon. Oh, and suddenly you're getting tons of burns just from one skill. Unfortunately, this doesn't work. They did nip that in the bud, so it doesn't quite function that way. But we can't deny there is a little bit of burn here. There's 3 stacks of burns on the Ring of Fire. They haven't actually updated the tooltip, but it absolutely does do that. And actually, the fake Eviscerate puts 19 seconds of burning. You can actually maintain permanent burning on a foe just from this. It's almost 10,000 burning damage just from using this with no might, which is pretty cool. The weapon itself actually gives you condition damage as well, just like the Fiery Greatsword does. But overall, I don't think it is the best thing to use. Speaking of the Fiery Greatsword, actually, yeah, it gives you condition damage. There's actually a lot of condition damage in this build. My number right now is 2,491. And we just dropped the Flame Axe there, so it went down. But it gets very high because not only can you flat boost it here with one of these conjures, but you can actually boost it further when you have 2 traits. You have the Strength of Stone trait, which converts your toughness into condi damage, and Power Overwhelming, both of these. In fact, if I think you run Rabid, you get insanely high condi damage, higher than most classes can get, just because you have access to these 3 things that other people don't get that much access to. So it's worth bearing in mind, and also at the end of your rotation, as we'll see when we fight this giant in a second, I'm actually going to try and summon the Fiery Greatsword last, so that I get that extra burn damage on my ticks. So that's something to consider. Another little bit of play as well that I haven't mentioned in this video so far is this whole Arcane trait that buffs our Arcane Skills. There he is. Well, actually, if you don't want to do some crazy spike of damage from burns, you can actually set up a lot of immobes and things that stop enemies moving out of your stuff by using Arcane Power in Earth, and then, or your heal skill in Earth. And that means your heal skill will actually start immobilizing people for 1.5 seconds. That's a lot of immob, like a lot of immob, especially when you apply 5 back-to-back from Arcane Power. Really, really strong, and again, sets up some really nice play for locking people perhaps in the firestorms. So there's more to it than meets the eye as well by using your other attunements. It can otherwise seem a little lackluster in terms of damage. Alright, so let's see whether we can kill this guy. We don't want him to move, and we actually want to unload our damage, so let's see what happens. We're going to pop our glyph first. We're going to stand near him, and hopefully he'll throw some grubs at us. That's good enough. Then we'll move in with the Arcane Power. We'll drop Glyph of Storms. Glyph of Storms is what we don't want him to move out of. So come on. There we go. And then we'll finish off with the Fiery Greatswords too. Now, that was absolutely not ideal, but he still burns down pretty quick. If we have a look at our damage ticks, you'll see several of them go over the 10k range. We're at 11k, 12k, 10k, 10k, 9, 10k again, and then we sort of drop off a little bit again. These guys are no joke. They're not actually that squishy, so hopefully this demonstrates at least a little the kind of power you can get out here. Last thing I will mention before we finish everything off is the sigils. Now, yes, I've mentioned here Corruption and Smoldering. If you don't like Smoldering, because it's really only 15% burning duration, because we're at 100% already, unless you consider World vs. World, where you're fighting people who may have Holbrack runes or bosses that shrug off condis quicker. If you don't like that, you can even run a combo of, say, Corruption and Bursting, maybe. Don't forget that the increased burning duration is nice, but they're very short anyway, so you don't get too much benefit out of it, even though they change the ticking calculations. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll finish the video off just by being very clear about this guy. So probably the most YOLO version of it you can run is what you're seeing here. In terms of raw PvE, you're probably looking at Dagger Focus, because your LOS mobs, and they'll actually stand in your Flame Wall, though Dagger Fan might have something nice for you on the Fire Grab too. So this would be kind of your complete YOLO PvE version, and the World vs. World or PvP version would be something like this. So Dagger instead. You'd want your Signet on there, maybe another one. You can swap a couple of glyphs off. You can even not use Glyph of Elemental Power if you want. You could use Storms instead. I'm saying cantrips might be quite nice. Cleansing Fire, of course, then puts more burns out, gives you a little bit more sustain. But most importantly, this would be the Evasive Arcana version of the spec. And, you know, you could continue changing it. This could become Water in the end, and then from that point on, you just become in a standard DD. So there you go, guys. That's the Incineration Ellie. This has been my experience with it. I'll keep you in the loop about how fun it is going forward. I'll tell you what, the playstyle is so different. I'm having an incredible amount of fun. I have not played an Ellie like this at all before, and it's really nice to see that actually kind of works too. Cheers, guys. I'll catch you next time.